evening, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Assassin's Creed, your number one podcast for all things Assassin's Creed.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 126 of Let's Talk Assassin's Creed. Declan, it is really nice to be back, mate. I'm so sorry that I missed the episode last week. You did a great job, though. It was like the old days of just listening to you on your own. But you did a great job of chatting about all things myth and updates on the show and what's coming up. So let's talk about what we're doing this week. This week we are talking all about Templars. Are they the bad guys? I think they're the bad guys, but let's find out more. And we're going to get some help this week with a friend of the show, fellow podcaster. Welcome, Andrew from Visions of the Past.
Hey, and it's good or bad, same side of the same coin. It's really a point of view, isn't it?
Well, we are getting right into the meat of the show right there, aren't we? There's plenty of bad assassins too. So, yeah, this is great.
A few. I mean,
Assassins are worse than Templars.
He was, wasn't he? Right at the very start of that first mission when he broke all three tenets of the creed. Yeah. So where do we start, Declan, with Templars? There's a lot to cover.
There is a lot to cover, and their origins and the mysteries is very shrouded in secrecy, but I think the best place to start is right at the beginning with Kane and Abel, because this is something that I noticed in Assassin's Creed Valhalla that probably isn't intentional, probably completely wrong, but Alfred being the sort of protagonist he is and turning the Templar faith more into a church-style order, a singular father of understanding, is very mirroring the Cain and Abel story that we saw in the Assassin's Creed 2 glyphs. But I could actually be completely wrong.
I need to hear more on this. I'm like, what? How? What?
Is me assuming you two may have already figured this out. Am I completely on the wrong train here?
Well, you might be the only one on the right train. Cain and Abel, they were in the Bible, right?
Yep. So Cain and Abel. So Cain murdered Abel over the apple of Eden that was, in theory, Eve's, but it went to Abel. So Cain murdered Abel to get the apple so he could control, I'm guessing, more than the children of Cain, like more of the population. We don't know a lot more outside of the biblical story and what we saw in those glyphs. We know a little bit more about Eve, but not for what we're talking about here. So I don't see the correlation between Cain and Abel and Alfred the Great outside of Alfred being the Grand Magister of the Order of Ancients in England, and then using Eivor to destroy his order so he could build it in service of the Father of Understanding, who he felt was the Christian God, the one true God. So I'm not quite sure where the correlation is.
Right. So he was rebuilding the Order of the Ancients as a. Is it right to say that it was to become a more Christian aligned?
I think that was his goal, because he was dead set against the Vikings and their paganism, and he didn't believe in the Isu even when Folke showed him proof. He just didn't believe it. He felt everything was wrong and was pure paganism.
So this is where my memory is hazy. So what was Folke? What was her kind of? She was trying to understand. She had one of the stones. Was it the Saga Stone?
She had the Saga Stone. Yep, that was brought over by Ragnar.
hang on. These are new facts to me. So the Saga Stone was brought by Ragnar Lothbrok.
Yep.
From Norway.
Yep. Yeah, it's a very throwaway line, but she makes a comment that it was brought over by Ragnar, and there was if I remember right, the way that conversation went, it made it sound like Ragnar was killed by the Northumbrian king, whose name I'm not going to even try to pronounce because he was a member of the Order of the Ancients at the time.
Was it Aella? I can't remember all the names of the
That
kings,
sounds about right.
Okay.
So that made it sound like that's how she got the stone, was because of him.
We've already gone off topic of Templars, but this is fascinating. So is the inference that Ragnar brought the stone with him just for reasons, or was Ragnar a member of the Order of the Ancients and they were fighting over the stone?
That's a good theory. I haven't seen anything on why he came from Norway or why he brought the stone. I mean, we don't even know
so
how.
The pieces are falling into place now. So the stone contained the words required to unlock Yggdrasil.
Yes.
So the stone came from, I guess it was found somewhere near Yggdrasil.
When you go into Yggdrasil, they make I don't know if they point it out with the camera or just make a passing line, but you can see the spot above the door where it used to be.
Ah, yes. Yes. Interesting. So now I'm wondering, I'm really sorry, Declan. We were going to talk about Templars, but hey, we've got Andrew here and he knows his stuff. Now I'm wondering, how did Ragnar either know to go to the temple, or did he get the stone from someone else who got it from the temple? I'm thinking of Svala, because she was an older lady. Would she have been alive?
That's the question.
When Ragnar was young, did she, because she started to awaken her previous memories, did she go to the temple and bring the stone back?
I would assume so, because I would put his sons, Ivar and Halfdan, and right around the age of Volka, her daughter. So that would make sense.
Damn, this is good. This is good theory crafting. It may be completely wrong, but
I think Valhalla's full of theory crafting.
Yeah.
I have a lot. I think I could go on a massive trip about them, but I've kind of lost my train of thought now already.
So let's talk full K then, and what the order of. So what was the Order of the Ancients were trying to understand those that came before and the temples and sites they left behind?
That's what it seems like. And Folke in particular, if you take a look at a lot of the notes in her study in Wessex, is that the city? Where Alfred's old keep is. If you go through all of those notes and check out all the notes in like Canterbury, seems to be researching Isu language, the sages. There's someone mentioned on Twitter that she was even dissecting a female sage of Aita. Mentions the heterochromia, everything. It makes you just say, no, that is an Aita sage. So she was really into trying to figure out what was going on with the Isu.
But sorry,
go on, Declan. Go on, mate. We're probably going to ask the same question.
I was just going to say, this kind of like backs up my theory for a while that for the past 11 games of the series before Origins, the Templars seem just really set in stone, order above everything else, Father Understanding. But looking at Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, it seems that the original Templar goals was nothing just to do with control and order as we see now. It was very much aligned with the Isu themselves. They seem to be more descendants of the Isu, which in my opinion, more like children of Cain. That's what, to me, they were more like. They were the children of Cain. They were following the Isu, and as Aelfred knows the Bible, knows religions, he wanted to push them away from that scenario. We don't follow paganism. That's not right. We need order, control, unification. So it's like Fulke is the true representation of what the Templars was going to be. The Isu control, learn, evolve, maybe reverse engineer pieces of Eden, maybe reverse engineer sage mechanics to make life last longer. But Aelfred's belief system kind of pushed them more to a order and unification, meaning that, in my theory, the Templars were never supposed to go towards order and unification, if that makes sense.
What it seemed to me was that the Order of Ancients, when you go through that whole tree, it was all about order, but how they were doing it. There were the zealots walking around acting like a guard, and then there was each of these branches that were trying to figure out one aspect of society to control, to bring it in, but they all were based on Isu. So you had some Norse pagans, you had some English Christians, and while they could work together, Alfred had that issue with the Norse paganism and the belief of the Isu. He considered it blasphemy. So he used Eivor to wipe the slate clean and build the Templar Order out of the ashes of the Order of the Ancients, using the Father of Understanding as his one true God. The problem is they don't realize that, well, maybe he ignores it. There are two known Isu Father of Understandings. There's Sabaoth and there's Jupiter. So it's, which one's your God? Which one do you follow? Do you follow any of them? Do you not realize that all that really means, all that title is basically you're the leader of a project. Sabaoth was the leader of the project that built humans, and Jupiter was the leader of the project that tried to stop the solar flare.
This is fascinating. I've never heard that first name before.
You really have to dig, and I'm not going to name the mother of what is it? It's the mother of wisdom and I can't remember the third
it's
one.
The voice, isn't it? The father, the mother, and the voice of something.
But those three, in Sabaoth's case, is the Demiurge. Demiurge was all about the birth of humans, from what I remember from reading. It's when you start digging into where they're pulling from, this religion, this belief structure, that belief structure, it's crazy.
Isn't there a reference to Samuel, who is Lucifer's real name, in Valhalla?
Yes,
as
I believe
one of the
Samael
Isu?
was the voice of the with Sabaoth, and I could be pronouncing it all wrong, but yeah, he was part of that group.
This is actually,
and I think the other one starts with a Y.
So this, I'm remembering where I was going now. This is where I was piecing together how Aelfred connects to Cain and Abel. Okay, it's wild, it's stupid, it's unintentional, I'm just bat crazy. But all the references to the Isu are very much paganism in Aelfred's eyes. But Cain and Abel is a very prominent story in the Bible of the first murder, the first sin, that would birth control afterwards, because after the first sin, you then get the commandments and order is controlled from it. But then there's also references to Samuel, who is Lucifer, the devil, and he's the voice. Now we all know that in the Bible, the voice of Satan is usually treason and deceit. So you need to go towards order to push away from the voice of Satan, from my understanding. So my own theory, personally, that when you look at the story of Cain and Abel from AC2 glyphs, you look at Samuel being represented as an Isu, and then Aelfred you kind of see that all of this is painting Aelfred to push the Order closer to a religion, because there have already been stories written of these people. Cain and Abel was documented before Aelfred was even born, if this makes sense. It's like referencing the story of Cain and Abel as a biblical entry as what's pushing Aelfred to become the Order under one true God the Father understanding, and push away Samuel, who will be the voice. And like I said, it's just probably the most insane interpretation someone's ever made.
Well, we don't know what he cherry picks from. So we don't know what information he decides to disregard, what he transforms into his own belief structure. We just don't know much about Alfred outside of the historic battles that he and the unification of England after he dismissed Eivor at Chittingham, where he burned the cakes. I can't remember the name.
Oh, that's the marshes out in Somerset.
Yeah.
Like Athelney Marsh, I think. Yeah. It's interesting listening to the conversation there, especially what Declan was saying, because what I realise is, although I was baptised when I was very, very small, I am not a Christian, and I don't really know anything about the Bible. But it's interesting how much, I guess, the early writers of the early games who are laying these foundations of the lore, especially with things like the glyphs, clearly were very influenced by the characters, the names, and so on of the Christian Bible. It almost feels like to understand Assassin's Creed lore, you need to go and do some Bible studies, and then come back and start studying the Assassin's Creed wiki,
and realize that the Christian God is probably an Isu, and that it very well could be the father of Adam. And
right,
because we know, I can't remember the name of the father of Eve, but it very well could be that he was the father of Adam, and they met, and that's where the apple comes from, because of that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There's just so many ways that you could take these stories, because the glyphs in 2 also talk about John the Baptist. They talk about Jesus of Nazareth. It's crazy with how far they went into it. They didn't go so far into Hinduism or Buddhism or other religions like that. At least I don't know enough about them to know if this is if what the references would be.
So
makes sense that you write what you know, and the writers were, I guess, Canadian or French Canadian, probably. Whether they were practicing or not, they were probably influenced by Catholic upbringings, I would guess, but I don't know for certain how diverse the writing team was. So I guess, you write what you know, don't you?
And it would make sense that if you're, and this is way off topic and kind of just a crazy thought, but if you're, it makes sense why we got into a fist fight with the Pope.
Everyone's favorite papal beating. Yeah. Oh dear. I'll tell you what I'm curious about. So Alfred co-opts Eivor into wiping out the Order of the Ancients across England. In the DLCs, so Wrath of the Druids, Siege of Paris, we're not dealing with Order of the Ancients, are we? The Children of Danu and
They're
the
not
Bellatorus Dei, they are not Order of Ancients branches, are they?
They're not stated that way, but they very easily could be written in that way based on their structure.
Yeah. See, what I'm wondering is, I get that Alfred was the King of England, although at the time England was Wessex, Mercia, and Kent. It wasn't even modern England, including Northumbria, was it? I don't think. No, because the Danes controlled Northumbria.
Because
So And again, I know I'm stretching the point here, but work with me. So Alfred wipes out the Order of the Ancients, with Eivor wipes out the Order of the Ancients in England, does some stuff in Ireland and Francia. That doesn't really seem to be enough to sort of establish this new Templar Order across Western or even all of Europe, because
No.
there are many other countries on the continent of Europe, and Alfred did not live so long. And I wonder, and again, I don't even know if there's any sources that would cover this period, but there must have been a period of time where there were still those in other countries, the Spanish kingdoms, the various Italian kingdoms, the German small states, where they were still following the sort of the Fulke kind of Order of the Ancients belief system, rather than Alfred's new belief system.
I would
wonder,
absolutely agree with you on that, because it's like it's 878. Alfred's got this little inkling, and this is what I'm going to do. I don't remember when he dies, but the Templar Order doesn't become officially sanctioned by the Pope until 1129. So you have these 250 years that seed can spread and go to the Middle East, Europe, Africa, probably even Asia. 250 years is a long time.
That is a long time indeed. That's a good point.
And we don't have a lot of information between that point in time and, well, even Assassin's Creed 1, which was 1191.
So I wanted to set the timeline there. So Alfred dies 899, because I just looked it up on Google whilst Andrew was talking. The events of Assassin's Creed 1 are 1191, when we know that the Templar Order is very well established. What was that date you said about the Pope recognizing the Templar Order?
I don't remember the name of the papal bull that officially recognized the Order of the Knights Templar, but that happened.
You keep talking. I'll look it up.
That happened in 1129 at the Council of Troy, and this council also it recognized Hugh de Payne as the first Grandmaster of the Order, and I remember me and Declan have talked about him and Bernard de Clairvoy. That was probably the last time I was on, and the Latin Rule. But
right,
that was that moment where they basically come out and said, here we are, we're the Templar Order. Publicly, we are going to protect the what is the term I'm looking for here? The pilgrims, as they go from Accra to Jerusalem for their holy pilgrimages. But in secret, it seems like they are, that allows them to go, okay, so is anybody smuggling pieces of Eden? Does anybody know anything? We can work our way in and out through here. But really, it seems like them going, wait, we can't be in the shadows anymore. The assassins just 30 years ago took the castle of Alamut and have come out publicly under oh man, I'm drawing a blank on his name too. Hassan Asaba, I think was his name. So it gets those points where these guys are out of the shadows and they're out publicly saying, here we are. You don't know what we're really doing. We want to bring peace to this country, but we're going to do it two different ways.
This is fascinating stuff. That's a really interesting gap. So Alfred dies 899. The Templar Order becomes officially sanctioned 1129. Council of Troyes. I think is it Troyes? It's pronounced. I'm not
Probably.
sure. Anyone from France listening, feel free to cry as I mispronounce your cities' names. That's a long period where stuff happened. And it could be some interesting stuff of almost like a Templar versus Order of Ancient civil war.
I think if you do a Templar game, that's probably the perfect place to put it, is to show the public birth of the Order.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the rise of, and again, let's try and mispronounce a French name. Hugh de Payen, I would guess his name would be pronounced.
Yeah, it's probably
You
better
know,
than me calling him Hugh to Pain.
it could be that. I don't know. Nothing worse than an English person trying to pronounce French words and then
Yep.
making a terrible mess of it. So yeah, that could be some interesting storytelling there. You could even do a story that has no assassins at all. You know, it's just Templars
You could
scrapping
just
it out
be
across Europe.
playing as a Templar who calls himself a Templar and goes, okay, this is the last holdout of the Order of Ancients. We need to wipe
Mm,
them out.
mm, mm.
To be fair, that could work in a story that I've been thinking of Rogue, but through a Templar's eyes. So imagine a Templar has gone through full case type regime, but they're not very tyrannical or anything. They're just secretly studying Isu. They don't have an agenda. And suddenly this new Templar goes, no, we're here to be more public, to cause order. We only have one father understanding. You could then argue that this Templar feels pushed out of the Order. He doesn't belong. And next, this Order's now being very tyrannical, very diabolical, and the whole city is under siege as a Templar tries to make a so I don't know what the word is where you try and overthrow somebody. And that Templar could, go to the assassins and just be like, hey, I don't agree with you, but I need your help getting rid of the Templar Order. And you could start to see how the Templar Order birthed just from one way of looking at the EC to a more unified way, if that makes sense.
It does. And it also would give a good way to explain how the Templar treasure of AC1 got to the Temple of Solomon from Egypt, because the apple in Origins is Bayek's apple is the same apple as Altair's.
Is it?
Yep.
Well, that's fascinating. See, I'm immediately interested in that because one of the theories I've heard from fans floating around is that if there is an Origins crossover story featuring Cassandra, and people seem to hope it will be Cassandra and Amunet, that they might be seeking that lost apple that Sutekh takes from Bayek, but then we find Sutekh dead in the desert.
Oh yeah, and that's a different apple.
Oh, that's a you're
that
blowing
is
my mind here.
Akhenaten's
So
apple. Yeah,
talk me through this, Andrew. The two apples. I don't remember
There's like 12 known apples.
Oh, so there's the apple that Bayek uses to beat Meduna Moon.
Yep.
Or kill Meduna Moon by beating him over the head.
That one's Altair's apple.
Right. So sorry, Declan, again, we're way off topic. Can you give me, because this is great, can you give me like the story then of that first apple? So Bayek kills Meduna Moon with it. Where does it go then? Does he give it to Aya for safekeeping?
The last we see of it is at the very end, where he puts it in a chest in the Alexandrian hideout.
Which is underneath a library of Alexandria.
Which, if I remember right, is the library we see Cassandra put the scroll in.
Right. But then the apple disappears from the records and it reappears in
1191 in the Ark of the Covenant.
Fascinating. So what do we know about Sutekh's or Akhenaten's apple?
The only thing that we really know about Akhenaten's apple is that he worshipped it.
Yeah.
It got buried. No, it didn't get buried. It ended up going to one of his priests, and then it stayed within that order and went to Isadora. Was that her name?
Oh yes, the god's wife of Amun.
Yep. And then she used it, and that was how the Curse of the Pharaohs came about. And then it ended up to, well, let's see, I don't remember the kid's name, but he was a descendant of Ramses II. and then we see him dead in the desert, and the apple's gone.
Right, that's Sutek with the red hair. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, but that's a different apple. All right, interesting. So there's 1,000 years between
Yep.
Bayek hiding the apple in a chest underneath the Library of Alexandria. Now, when the Library of Alexandria is destroyed, is it buried? Is it now under the sea because of various earthquakes and other changes? I think it is.
That would make sense.
My God! The problem is, since I've played Rogue, I now think that every earthquake was caused by people trying to experiment with apple. Right, exactly. Anyway, so that apple then was somehow retrieved by somebody and put into the Ark of the Covenant in Jerusalem at some point, but we don't know when.
Yeah. So
again, there's some good storytelling in there.
Yep, a Templar story about the birth of the Templars, because that's really the crux of Assassin's Creed 1 and Robert de Sable. His story revolves around that apple, knowing how that apple got there and knowing that Robert and his 10 accomplices were looking for that apple would be a really good story.
Yeah, so almost like an immediate prequel to the opening scenes of Assassin's Creed 1.
Yep.
Yeah, nice. Damn, my mind is blown, Declan. This is great.
See, this is the problem with the franchise, in my opinion, that the Templar lore is so rich and so diverse that we have yet to explore it. We've had so much assassin stories that Rogue's Templar story is one of the best Templar stories we have, because we haven't scratched the surface yet. And the problem I'm having with Templars is they're too much painted in a black light. You know, they're evil, they're tyrannical, their order is wrong. But when you look at people like Haytham Kenway, he was kind of a visionary at that time. You know, his opinions that assassins or Templars couldn't live in together, not because they just can't, but it's because their philosophies couldn't mix. And it's that like grey area that if they were willing to change the philosophies, assassins and Templars could coexist. And you see in the Unity novel, you know, the third option, you know, there doesn't have to be a war, there could be a third option, a peace. And it's kind of sad that that kind of topic of grey area of Templars, they're not inherently bad, is buried in transmedia. And the other thing as well is, as I explained in my little ramble last week, there is a whole bias nature playing as an assassin watching a Templar, because you're inherently looking for bad behaviour and how bad they're doing. But one could argue that a Templar could knock down 10 homes to rebuild 100. Knocking down 10 homes, making 10 people homeless, is bad. But in the long run, you are giving people 100 homes. So, and it comes to that whole comment I made on Saturday, you know, the needs of a few outweigh the needs of a many. You know, that's like a Templar grey area that could be explored, but we don't get that. We just get Templars want destruction, or Templars just want pure control, and it's kind of an unfair light to paint the Templars in.
You see the best Templar stories within the game through Haytham's eyes and through Altair's eyes. I'm halfway through the Secret Crusade, and really up to this point, it's only covering AC1. But you see a lot how he pieces together these Templars and how they're going from, they're talking about slavery and making weapons and blockading ports, but they're going, well, we're doing the blockade because nobody's going to understand what we're doing. Do these people look like slaves? They can barely stand. And their work, and there was another one who took everybody's grain, and he's like, we're teaching them how to ration for the lean times when they come. There in that game, and you really have to look for it within the game, because they don't do a lot of stuff from a story cutscene perspective. You have to really dig through the DNA notes, so to speak, of the Animus to find it. But you can see that the Templars and the Assassins are the two sides of the same coin. They both want peace, but the Templars are going to do it through force if necessary. And the Assassins believe that freedom and knowledge is what should bring peace, when that typically just brings chaos. But when we look at Hatham, he summed up his beliefs best in like 2 quotes. And it's unfortunate that they both happened when he died. The people will never have the power, only the illusion of it. And here's the real secret. They don't want it. The responsibility is too great to bear. It's why they're so quick to fall in line as soon as someone takes charge. They want to be told what to do. They yearn for it. And that really shows, you see that in Assassin's Creed in the first one. You just see that all throughout the people who are willing to be so quick to join the Templars. But the one quote that'll hit everyone, I think, is, even when your kind appears to triumph, we still rise again. And do you know why? It's because the Order is born out of a realization that we require no creed, no indoctrination by desperate old men. All we need is the world be as it is, and this is why the Templars will never be destroyed. We see that in every game. End of the game, the Assassins have won, and you think it's going to be great. But next year, we got a new game, and the Templars seem to be even stronger than they were before.
It's a great line. Just that one line there. All we need is that the world be as it is.
They're looking to truly change the world, to create the peace that they want, that they believe the world should have. When the Assassins are going, yeah, no, we believe people should have free thought. Just that free thought just doesn't always work well, because people will fight each other over it.
So, Andrew, I've got a question for you then. So, Hatham is a pretty significant character in the franchise. We get to play as him for sort of the first third of Assassin's Creed 3. We see him again in Rogue. He's mentioned extensively in the Unity novel. Are there any other Templar characters who you think are particularly fleshed out so we can understand their motivations, their beliefs, their goals, all those things?
So Hatham is one of the most well-known Templars. He's in 3, we play as him. He's in Rogue. He's basically got his own novel. And he is mentioned in Syndicate as well, if I remember right. But there is one Templar who, if you get into the transmedia, is even more fleshed out. And that's Juhani Berg. He was in, I don't remember if he was in the Initiate site, but he was in Rogue. He was in Syndicate. He was not in Unity. Rogue, Syndicate. He's at the very end of Odyssey's Fate of Atlantis DLC. He's got 2 comic series based on with him, and he's a part of Assassin's Creed Uprising with Juno's death. He's probably more fleshed out than Hatham.
Yeah, I'm thinking I need to read some of the comics. Don't work for me. I'll be honest, I've tried to read them, but they just don't work for me. But now you're making me think I need to try again. Have you read any of the comics, Declan? Do you know anything about Berg?
I know a bit about Berg. I can't read comics. It's not good for my brain. I'm very weird. I don't like audio or comics. I just like novels.
Hang on a minute. You don't like audio? Are you spotting the problem here, my friend?
Let me just point out quickly, I know it's off tangent, but audiobooks don't work because I have to create a mental image of the book I'm reading. I can't have that image given to me, otherwise my brain can't understand the words.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's.
I can get that. It's very hard. It's like if you weren't from I'm gonna date myself, but not by too much. Like it's more dating of my parents. But when you only had radio and there were radio plays and things like that. So to me, that's why I really like Assassin's Creed Gold. I can get into that. I can see it. And to be honest, it didn't hurt that they put the main character as blind. So it's like you're seeing what he's seeing. But that's a topic for another podcast, my friend. Um, but I totally understand where you're coming from.
So you're on to Otzelberg, and this is the part of the podcast I've been waiting the most about. I like Otzelberg. He's the.
Oh, I forgot to mention, he's like the main character of the multiplayer too. The story
Which
is around
multiplayer?
his training as a Templar. Yeah.
Which multiplayer, Andrew?
Revelations is the one where he really picks up as a named character,
Oh,
where they talk
right.
about his daughter and why he's becoming a Templar.
Oh, that's fascinating. We should probably say one thing, Declan, because I promise I have been paying attention in class. If Six Keys is listening, I believe she would tell us that his first name is pronounced Honey. So the emphasis is on the first syllable, and the J is pronounced like an English Y. So we'll just get that in there. Now we'll carry on talking about
I've been saying that wrong for it's almost 10 years. So that's probably not going to change.
It's fine. You got to have friends in high places. What can I say?
Yeah.
But the Finnish J is pronounced like an English Y, and Finnish language, they have some long words with many syllables, but apparently the emphasis is always on the first syllable.
I wonder if that's why he goes by his middle name for the most part.
That's a good point. I don't know anything about his backstory as described in the comics. I mean, he first appears in game let's ignore multiplayer. I haven't played Revelations multiplayer, but he first appears kind of in game in Rogue, as I remember. And
Yep.
I just remember thinking, okay, you're Finnish, but Otso and Berg as two is his middle name and last name, to me don't sound especially Finnish. They sound more German to me if I was going to guess which country he came from, but I don't know his life story.
I have his webpage up from the wiki, and they do very good work about behind the scenes and stuff. So Juhani is, of course, Finnish, but it's a cognate of the Hebrew name Yochanan, basically meaning God is merciful. Otso
Interesting.
is Finnish, but it's archaic. It means bear. And Berg means mountain in several Germanic languages. So basically, He is the bear of the mountain.
Interesting. And he's quite a physically formidable chap, so I think that works well.
Yep. Yeah, he is specifically in the Templar comics. I love the way he's portrayed there. That's the comic where he picks up the title of the Black Cross, which the Black Cross is basically the Templar boogeyman. He's the one Templar that everyone is afraid of because he roots out the corruption in the Templar Order. And he's just a get. And it's amazing.
See, this is what I really wanted to talk about. I'm glad you brought it up. The Black Cross. Like, the fact that it's a comic is really irritating because it should be in a game. But it just shows you that he single-handedly is going after the corruption inside the Templar Order, but also going outside and taking out the assassins as well, which means this guy's a one-man army. He's like John Wick of the Templar world. But it just proves that the Templars, if the Templars could create a Black Cross to weed out the really bad seeds in the Templar Order that's bringing down, why have the assassins never done the same? Because
we don't know.
That's...
We see, so we jump around so much in in the history of Assassin's Creed. I mean, we could say like the most games are actually set in the 1700s. Black Flag early 1700s,
Yeah.
Unity, Rogue, Syndicate, or not Syndicate 3, mid to late. So you got 4 games in that 100-year period, but they're all in essentially North America. We don't know what's going on in Europe. We don't know what's going on in Asia, Australia. Well, Australia wasn't founded yet, but we don't know what's going on in these other places. And we don't know when the Black Cross came about, or if there's an assassin boogie hunter, so to speak.
What about Shay?
Shay, I could see Shay being the first Black Cross. The only thing I would have a problem with that story would be his age, because he spends so much time hunting the precursor box, and then all we know about him after he kills Charles Dorian in 17. Oh goodness, what year was that?
75.
Yeah, I was gonna say 76, but you're right. It was before the end of the American Revolution, and that
Yeah, that's how I always do the maths. American Declaration of Independence is at 1776. It's minus 1 year or minus 6 months, whatever it is. Yeah,
and it's just absolutely that line makes no sense.
I think it's December the 26th, if I remember rightly. When
I know it's somewhere around Christmas
died. Yeah,
but after that moment in time, all we know about him is that he trains his son and his grandson, and the grandson's in Lost Descendants.
That's where I was going to go, Andrew. You're on the same thought as me, because my question is that in Last Descendants, there is just that pub guy, and he's just, your grandfather was an assassin hunter, and now it's your turn, and he has the same skills as Shay. And it's like, that is the quintessential boogeyman of the Assassin Order, but it lacks the finesse of who's controlling that organization and where did it vanish to.
Well, that's another thing about the Templars that really brings in questions, and this one is going to come out of the movie. So we have seen since Assassin's Creed 1, our belief is that the CEO of Abstergo, Alan Rickon, is the leader of the Templars. He's the Grandmaster. He controls everything because he controls that company. But what we find out in the movie is he reports to a council. And the Council of Elders, I want to say, is the name of it. And that he sat on another council that was the inner sanctum of the Templar Order. It included Otto Berg, Warren Vidic, Daniel Cross at one time, Letita England. There's Simon Hathaway was on it.
Yeah.
And so we see that they're controlling everything. And when Berg comes out as the Cross, he's at the inner sanctum basically saying, I don't report to you. So does he report to the Council of Elders? Does he really report to anybody? What truly is the command structure, for lack of a better term, of the Templar Order? Who's really in charge?
I want to go back one tiny step. I think this is fascinating. I just want to go back one tiny step. For those in the audience, like me, who don't know what the Black Cross is, could you explain it?
The best way to describe the Black Cross is the man that weeds out, or woman that weeds out, corruption within the Templar Order. I'm drawing a blank on the lady's name in gold, but she was trying to make money on herself by herself on the black market outside of Templars knowledge. He'd have went after her. He when money started coming missing, and it turns out it was being funneled out of Abstergo by Violet DaCosta into the instruments of the First Will, he went after Violet DaCosta. That's how he started working with the assassins. He was trailing that money.
Hang on. Otto Berg goes after Violet DaCosta?
Yes.
Because again, me being someone who only pretty much knows the stories as described in the game, they are sort of, maybe they're not friends, but they are so cozying up on screen.
They
in
are
Rogue.
Um, DaCosta, for the most part, throughout her career at Abstergo running security, she works almost directly underneath Berg for years. Once he finds out she is the reason that Abstergo is bleeding money and is a member of the First Will, all of that's gone, and he starts hunting her.
Wow.
One of the last moments, and I don't remember if it's before or after he blows up Alvaro Grammatica's lab in Australia, is he's basically tells her off, and she's like, well, you can't go anywhere, you're dead to rights, me and my men have you. And then Abstergo shows up, his Sigma team shows up and just lays waste to everything. And she's not dead from that shot, but he leaves her laying dying in the Australian outback.
Interesting. Damn, there's a lot of story going on here that just isn't. Okay, I tell you what. Let me ask you another question, because clearly your knowledge of the stories covered in the comics is very detailed. Is there a story, maybe in a single comic or spread across multiple comics, that you would love to see brought to a game?
If they could get the combat to work, I'd like to see Solomon Bolden. He was the Black Cross in the 1920s. And what we see in the comic is him in Shanghai running down. What was it that he was running down? It had something to do with the... shoot, I don't even remember. But yeah, I'd like to see something with Solomon Bolden. He's a... oh, goodness, I don't even remember what nationality he was. I think he was African American.
Mm-hmm.
He was darker skin, and him going around the world as the Black Cross would be very interesting, especially in the 1920s.
I'm thinking it's a perfect opportunity to make Jazz Age junkies, Declan.
Yeah, I want more about that information too. I want to know where that DNA came from.
Yeah, our recordings are a little out of order because of the complexity of editing our interview with Darby and McDevitt, but we do discuss a little bit. So this is episode 125. We are hoping we may be able to publish the Darby interview as episode 126, to be confirmed. And we do discuss a little bit about Jazz Age Junkies and some of the other sort of fictional game titles that you see in the Helix Navigator.
You mentioned the Helix Navigator, and that there's the very beginning of Assassin's Creed, the self-titled comic with Charlotte de la Cruz. She's in a Helix playing I think it's 1886 American Wild Wild West kind of stuff. And there's the hidden blade is in the heel of the boot, but it comes straight down, or I don't remember if that's in the comic or if that was a concept art I saw.
I saw someone do a concept art in the last month or so, and they shared it on the Assassin's Creed subreddit. And it was what you described, a hidden blade in a cowboy boot, for want of a better word. And it was amazing.
It was
fantastic.
Twitter, yeah. But the idea of either like 1920s, like the Jazz Age, kind of showing what, like, how does Prohibition work? Why are they doing that? And it's just would be interesting to me. Like, how does organized crime in the American 1920s into the 1930s, how does that work out with the Assassins and Templars? Are they, is like Al Capone a Templar because he's working on controlling Chicago? Is he an assassin because he goes against the government? Is he neither and feuds with both? Is the St. Valentine's Day Massacre a destruction of Templars, assassins, a group of both?
I've been wondering if the Jazz Age Junkies could be written as the first purge, because we know the assassins were purged by Daniel Cross in 2001, I believe. But one could say that maybe during the Jazz Age, the whole prohibition and everything was the Templars just trying to bleed out the assassins, you know.
Oh, that'd be a good way to do it too. And I always, with Jazz Age Junkies, I always pictured that story being in New Orleans. It just feels a New Orleans tale with jazz and that kind of ambiance, I guess is the right word.
I guess we can't say yet, but tune in next week when Darby gives his 30-second pitch for Jazz Age Junkies.
The Darby elevator pitch.
I know, it's so yeah. We're not allowed to sort of say until the final edit's been approved. But yeah, he gives his kind of concept, should we say? So,
but this little chat has brought up a little bit of an issue I'm having with the franchise, and it's a very picky and a very stupid thing to pick at. But every time we get a new history setting, a new idea of what an Assassin's Creed could be, the franchise is grown, the way the series is, for a better word, the way the series has evolved, to immediately jump at what's the assassin story, who's the assassin we're playing. And as I keep defending with the mythology arc, that is the wrong ideals to have, in my opinion, because from Assassin's Creed 1 to Syndicate minus Rogue is all assassins. That's near enough 10 games assassins. Rogue is the only Templar game we've ever had. Then we get the mythology arc, which is the only Isu lore type games we've had in the entire franchise. And I know they're not perfect, but they're the only ones that give us more Isu lore than just breadcrumbs. So the next game, and everyone's like, it's got to be feudal Japan of assassins, or like for example here, Jazz Age Junkie as assassins. It's kind of now making me think that why can't we be open to think, what if the next game is the Templars? What if it's Rogue 2.0 but with Templars? What if it's Jazz Age Junkies but the Templars are purging the assassins? If you get what I mean, it's kind of like we're expecting too much to be assassins but not enough the other pillars of the franchise like Templars or the Isu.
So the idea of that would be great, but the only thing that I can see that you might be missing is the rumor of Rift, the Bassam story in Baghdad, being a standalone game.
I haven't really wanted to touch on,
and I don't want to go into
Rift.
that either, because that's either going to be an assassin story, an Isu story, or a combination of the both. Because that's how Bassam is. You're either talking about him as Loki, or you're talking about him as an assassin. So, for the purposes of this podcast, it's just kind of one of those things to mention that that's probably coming first. But I would love a story about a Templar in feudal Japan, for instance, trying to figure out how they can control that island through the shogunate and through the samurai.
Yeah. The Sengoku Jidai seems like a good time to, if you want that background conflict that the modern games always seem to have, then that would be a great time to set that, wouldn't it? With the cities, the daimyo, the many thousands of samurai soldiers fighting. Yeah, that would be fascinating.
And like, if you really want to push the control aspect, you move it forward to when they stop their isolation and start letting the Portuguese in. Or at least I think the Portuguese were the first ones.
Yeah, I think it was, wasn't it? It was in the late 16th century, the Portuguese, and then the Dutch arrived. And then I think when the wars were over, and if Tokugawa Ieyasu emerges as the shogun, I think they restrict the trade just to a couple of ports, don't they, on the far south coast?
And that would be like, at that point in history, the way I see it is maybe there's Order of Ancient members there, and maybe they're secretly moving off the island and bringing in the Templars or the Assassins. But that point in time would be when both organizations would boom because Templars are coming in from other countries, assassins are coming in from other countries.
Yeah. Oh, we've discussed this with other guests, haven't we? There's so much history and so many interesting locations where you could fit the Templar story or the assassin story or both.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Japan
if
would
you
be a fascinating one.
And if you do a good modern day, you don't even need a Templar assassin story. There's the Assassin's Creed comic with Charlotte de la Cruz. There is a one arc where the history is in South America, Mexico, before conquistadors, and her ancestor is a message runner. She looks like an assassin because of the hood and the cloak, but she's not. So you could tell a simple story outside of those groups about chaos, order, or freedom and tyranny that the series is deep down at the foundations based on.
To be honest, this is where like you get into the whole age-old debate of the franchise that's been going on for since the dawn of time. I'm going to put it now. You could theoretically, as you were saying, have one of the greatest Assassins vs. Templar stories in modern day. It is the best thing on sliced bread. But the modern day could have nothing to do with Assassin and Templars. Well, the past, I mean, will have nothing to Assassin and Templars. It could just be an Eivor type story. But a lot of fans will not be happy with that because it's not the past and you're not playing as an assassin. And it just gets complicated then. Like, it could be the best Assassin vs. Templar story from modern day, but a lot of outlets would review bomb it because nobody wants that, which is weird. How to this day, a lot of news people are now saying Assassin's Creed recently, Dawn of Ragnarok, is the best DLC in the franchise because it has no modern day. And it just...
Sorry. Dear, I probably should have myself there while I started laughing. Anyway, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, this is the problem that like I'm mentally facing, that it feels like a lot of the franchise news articles and loud people on the internet, I'm calling them loud people, are really forgetting that modern day is the core pillar. If we have one of the greatest Templar stories in modern day and no links in the past, maybe the past was just Suna caught in the middle of it, a civilian, it wouldn't sell well. It feels like the series is limited to the past. The past has to connect to either side, and so does the modern day, and it kind of makes things feel complicated, if that makes sense.
Well, the problem we have with the modern day is that it's almost everywhere. The last we saw Otto Berg, for instance, in the video game was Odyssey's DLC, where he becomes crippled. We see a deleted message in Valhalla about his interrogation. But what we don't see is hidden away in the Brotherhood of Venice board game, where he apparently uses some kind of tech to walk again.
What? That's in the Brotherhood of Venice board game?
There's a Tokyo 21 DLC expansion that has him in it, and that's what I gather from what I've read online, because I didn't have $200 to buy the board game.
That's a hell of an expensive board game. Wow.
It's a lot of minifigs, man. A lot of minifigs.
Okay.
Let's just, for James, because I've been following that board game for years since it was first announced. That Tokyo expansion is actually canonically correct because it was written with Ubisoft, where the rest of the content wasn't.
The problem I have with Tokyo being canonically correct is Layla's in it.
Yes.
Why would that not make it canonically correct?
The end of Valhalla.
Well, when's the board game set, though? When's the modern day in the board game?
I assumed that 21 meant that it was set in 2021. So
let's
maybe
hope
I'm wrong.
I see your point, but yes. Spoilers for Valhalla ending, I guess, there, everyone. But yeah, good point. Please, you need a lore master, someone that signs off this stuff.
It's funny because when they brought, and it's off topic, when they brought that expansion out, it was before Valhalla was even released.
Yep.
I assumed logically that the next expansion for this franchise was going to be Tokyo, and the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice Tokyo 2021 was actually going to be the tie-in to the franchise because
Yep.
it's Tokyo 21. The game was coming out in 2020, coming up to 2021. Why wouldn't that work? Because the story was co-written with Ubisoft, and it's literally you infiltrate Abstergo. I'm looking at the wiki, and there is actually no date on when this is actually set. You know, there's like mission infiltration and everything, but it doesn't look like there's physically a date to when it happened.
Yeah, and I think the only dates that we have are for the Ezio stuff, which, in my opinion, we didn't need more Ezio story. And to be fair, there's a thread on Twitter from Lord Raelis, who he has the game and basically went through all the story. And I haven't had time to go through it. But when they announced Tokyo 21 and they showed Sean, Layla, and Rebecca as your three characters with a hidden one, I went, okay, so Layla's going to live. They're going to introduce a new character, and they're keeping it secret. And that character turned out to be Berg. When I got to the end of Valhalla, I was like, oh, it's going to be Bassam. This will be interesting. No. Which that story ought to be interesting to see where it goes to in Rift or Infinite or whatever's next. But
AC next.
Yeah. Speaking of Infinite, that you mentioned being worried about not being able to get a Templar story because of review bombing. Infinite's the perfect platform for it because it'll be a smaller story and they'll have options to get your assassin story, your maybe even your Eruditu story, ones who came before, the hidden ones, all of it. You could put it all right there and just be like, well, look, if you don't want to play that story, don't pay for it.
That is a good point. Just to backtrack one, while you were talking, I had to dig a little dig. Andrew, correct me with the dates. Valhalla, Odyssey, Origins follow real world time, don't they? Like 2021,
They do,
2022.
yes. Valhalla mentions COVID by name.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. The reason I'm asking, I was on the wiki, sorry, I had to look at this. Abstergo Mystery was a mission in the Tokyo facility for the DLC. It's set in circa 2020.
Okay,
Now,
so as long as they do it before August, because that was the date that it was, if I remember right, August 16, and there's a reason why I remember that day specifically, was the day that Layla went into Yggdrasil. And the reason why I know that is because that's my birthday.
Oh.
That's why I remember it. Now my question is, I'm going to look real quick and see if I'm actually right or if I'm just like, hey, my birthday's special.
but that kind of leaves the problem that all of 2020 you're in that hut in Scandinavia, in Vinland, I mean. When did you leave to go on a Tokyo mission?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it could have happened before. I mean, there's 2 years has passed from the events of Fate of Atlantis.
Yes,
and the hut, the cabin in the woods in Vinland.
If it's set late 2019, mid 2019, all before COVID, because if you go through those emails of Layla, and there's some from January, February 2020. Yep, August 16, 2020. So I know it's where we ended up was a long way off from Templars, but I mean, the fact that we're talking about the Black Cross growing legs, I think it's kind of important.
I think my only final thoughts I'm kind of having for this chat is, why is it that I am learning today a lot more about the Templar Order, especially the Black Cross, in transmedia, but the stuff we get in game about the Templars isn't really that detailed unless you go digging. Until Origins, a lot of the assassin story is really pushed into your face, and you get that straight away. That is brilliant. But now you're saying we have to dig deeper into the games to get the Templar story, and it's kind of like, shouldn't it be equal? Shouldn't we be getting a lot more Templars than assassins? Because without Templars, you wouldn't have assassins, and without Isu, you would never technically have a human race. So let's just put that up.
Yeah, they're just different sides of the same coin. I mean, you have to go hunting computers in 1.4 Rogue to get modern day story on Templars. You have to go play the multiplayer for the story to get stuff on Templars. Even Unity, which is about bringing Templars and assassins together, you don't get a lot of Templars. I mean, I have a very small blurb in my notes about Unity because Francois Delasserre, he's not talked about a lot. Germain, all we really get is that he's connected to Jacques de Molay, as they're both sages of Aida.
Yeah, most of the Templar storytelling in Unity is done in the novel, and then in particular in the Abstergo handbook.
Yep.
There's not.
Oh yeah, I got that over there too. I need to actually read that cover to cover.
Oh, it's fantastic. One day, Declan, I would love to have Christy Golden on the show, the author that wrote Heresy and the handbook. And
she's an amazing
writer.
Novelization. Even outside of Assassin's Creed, her work is amazing. I first heard of her name in Star Wars.
Yeah.
She's just great.
Yeah. One day. I wanted to ask you, I wanted to come back to the Templar topic, and I wanted to ask you, I think this is a simple question. Let's see where we go. So, Syndicate. The Templar Grandmaster is Crawford Starrick. Yes. He controls all aspects of British, or I guess we could say British, but at least life in London, transport, banking. He's got the populace under his control with Starrick's syrup. London is the centre of the British Empire, from which he can sort of control activities around the globe. Was Crawford Starrick the most powerful Templar Grandmaster?
Outside of the modern day?
Good point.
Because I would say that Alan Rickon would have been pretty dang powerful as the CEO of Abstergo. But outside of the modern day, of the ones that we've seen, yeah. Because most of the kings and queens were puppets. Churchill, you never knew if he was working with the Assassins or the Templars. He swapped sides so many times.
Which mirrors his political career, which I find quite amusing. So, yeah.
Hitler was a puppet. Stalin was a puppet. FDR and Truman were puppets. So yeah, I would say probably. And if he'd have been able to get the shroud, the only thing that would have stopped him would have been a natural death.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Which you don't know that unless you read one of the comics.
So I think that is the conclusion of this episode, which is there's actually a hell of a lot of Templar storytelling out there, but it's either in the comics or it's in the film, or you need to go and hack an awful lot of computers in Black Flag, in Rogue. Did you mention there's also hidden lore in Assassin's Creed 1 through hacking?
We're talking about the emails of Vidic, and this is where you first find out about the Philadelphia Project being a ISU tech. You get a little bit about New Fluoride. You find out that Vidic's a really bad person, and how Abstergo actually works on the inside through I'm drawing a blank on her name. Lucy's story. And let's not get into Lucy because she's assassin Templar. She's traded sides more times than Churchill.
A triple agent.
Yeah. And then you don't learn about that until the Lost Archives DLC, which that DLC was not fun.
That's
I didn't
the
like
DLC
the
for Revelations,
view.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I haven't done that one. I probably should.
I've never played a single Assassin's Creed DLC till Origins, so I am behind.
Yeah. I've been trying to go back over the last 4 or 5 months and fill in the gaps. I think the only DLC I've got left is Tyranny of King Washington.
Oh, that one's
stuck.
fun. That one's
I am
fun.
stuck. Do you want to have a laugh, Andrew? Right.
Sure.
So the first mission is you sneak up to the town with Canizio, and
tell me if I'm right. You're stuck at the cannon part where you have to fire on the.
I'm stuck at the cannon part.
I
am not normally an aggressive or angry gamer. I am pretty chilled. My last rage quit was that fucking cannon mission. So I gave up, and I thought, you know what? I've got better things to do with my time. I'll go and play something
You have
else.
to do that almost perfectly. And then what's really horrible about that mission in particular is to get 100%, you have to be perfect. I can't tell you how many times I restarted it because I wanted to get 100% on the remaster deal achievements.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I don't think I'll ever play Tyranny of King Washington.
The good part, quote unquote, is that it's an alternate timeline created by the president's apple, which there's another story. How did that apple go from the Atlantic Ocean to FDR's the White House?
Why do you say Atlantic Ocean?
Well, that's my assumption. At the end of that DLC, Ratka Hayton takes it out on the Aquila and drops it in water. I assume it's the Atlantic.
Oh, interesting.
But Assassin's Creed 2 states that the apple that Washington had is the same apple that FDR had, is the same apple that John F. Kennedy was killed for. So how did it go from the ocean back to the president?
Can't be the same apple.
According to Assassin's Creed 2, it is. According to the Essential Guide, it is. Let me look at that real quick, because that's right in front of me.
Okay, they're made of metal or whatever. They're not going to float.
Right,
Submarines
exactly.
that can dive to the bottom of the sea weren't possible until the 1950s. So yeah, there are some gaps here.
Grand Templar key staves apple 3. Yep, Apple of Eden 3. Known owners: Washington, Ratka Hayton, FDR, JFK.
Okay, I'm not trying to get scientifically nerdy here or anything, but has the franchise ever explored the metals the pieces of Eden are made out of?
The closest thing that we got to exploring the metal was the Fate of Atlantis DLC, where they're talking about adamant.
Yeah.
And a little bit, like, it's hard for me to not take this correlation seriously between silica in Origins and seeing it again in Dawn of Ragnarok.
I've
I
not played
feel
on the
like that
Ragnarok, but I assume
silica.
that was a very deliberate choice, wasn't it, to choose
Yes,
silica as the
and
material?
I took a picture of silica in the database, and they specifically mention that it ran the machines in Origins. Specifically mentions it in ancient Egypt, still having power. So
Okay.
I think theory that the silica is what truly powers the piece of Eden, but it's the adamant that they're built from. Assuming you can take Fate of Atlantis as the truth.
And this is the whole problem with these mythical DLCs, is how much is
That's
literal.
The whole problem with Alethea.
Well, indeed, yeah, and how much do you have to just say, no, this is all made up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slightly off topic, but I think everyone has kind of realised now that all the myth arcs in Valhalla actually don't have anything to do with the turbo catastrophe that much.
I haven't finished the DLC, so let's not get too far into it. But I
I
just got
haven't
to
either.
E-Tree, and they show the tower, and somebody, it might be in the database, makes me feel like it's one of the towers that was used to stop the catastrophe when Desmond went off. Just a feeling. I haven't finished the story, so I don't know if that's true or not.
I haven't either. Just the more I play through Dawn of Ragnarok, the more I look at Asgard and Jotunheim, the more I realise actually Ragnarok has nothing to do with the turbo catastrophe. That is just a backdrop to the real Dawn of the Ragnarok.
Interesting.
Because if anyone knows Norse myth, Dawn of Ragnarok is physically the battle of the gods. And if gods are Isu, it means Ragnarok is technically an Isu civil war.
Which, didn't that happen before the human Isu war?
I think it happened during as well.
Because that makes a very interesting cluster between the human Isu war, the Toba catastrophe, the possibility of their civil war. Let's not even mention the elves and the hints in Origins that there was a race before the Isu.
I know this is off topic, but a race before the Isu is the most logical thing ever, because you cannot just say the Isu popped up out of nowhere. They have to have a evolutional
well, yeah, they got to
point.
come from somewhere. And the fact that they could live for hundreds of years, look at Hermes. So,
which is why logically, and I know it's really off topic, but logically I argue now that the first Isu race should have evolved at the very, very tail end of the Cretaceous period. They lived, they built civilizations, then the first turbo catastrophe hit, which is what wiped out the dinosaurs and every life on the planet, but we know scientifically no one knows what caused it. Was it meteorite? Was it something else? It is debated it was a meteorite. Then the Isu that survived the turbo catastrophe, as a lot of life did, would have evolved, and then they would have retook all the elf technologies, I'm going to name it now, and they would have grew to the Isu we know now. So logically, elves had to come at the very tail end of the Cretaceous period.
Isn't there a theory that says the Isu arrived on Earth in a spaceship, and that spaceship was the meteor crash that killed the dinosaurs?
I think that theory was linked to the scrapped idea that Desmond and Lucy was going to fly off in a spaceship.
Oh, I always that scrap thing always to me tied to the Mesopotamian deities and their spaceship thing.
I have one objection to that. The Isu came from space. Well, I have two objections. First of all, I just don't like the fact that you can kind of explain stuff away as they came from space, but that's just a personal thing.
That's fair.
on the point of dates, aren't there references? I think it's in Fate of Atlantis, but I could be wrong, where they are talking about the experiments on humans, and they give dates like the year 2320 of the Isu era.
Of the Isu era, yes. But we don't know how the Isu era lives. Like, even in Syndicate, when we're in World War One and Juno's doing her blue hologram thing, she mentions like 1923 of the Isu era.
Yeah.
So she mentions like her birth date of, at least I think it's her birthday, in Isu era terms. So what starts the Isu era? How does that transition happen? Yeah, I totally get it.
Plus, and I know the whole internet is going to read into this, so please do not, for the love of God, read into what I am about to say, because I'm not hinting at anything.
But before you say it, I just want to point out this comes from you being a mentor. You know that, right?
No, this comes out. This what I'm about to say comes from me being a dad. So
Okay,
people
that's fair.
don't read into this. It's about me being a dad. So my 5-year-old really loves dinosaurs. Okay, don't read into it, people. Leave me out. And on one of his dinosaur cards, they showed a Homo reptilian, and it was basically said this is an artist's interpretation of what a specific dinosaur would have evolved into if it had not reached a failed stage of evolution. Now, where I'm getting at is, if a reptile was possible, if it not hit a dead end evolution, was able to evolve into a Homo reptilian, it's not physically impossible that a Homo sapien style life form could have actually evolved during the Cretaceous period near the end.
Did the artist drawing look like King Koopa from the Super Mario Brothers movie?
Yes. Have you ever seen it before? It's very
No,
creepy.
I haven't. Like, I haven't followed a lot of dinosaur stuff since I was a young kid. I loved dinosaurs then, but
The only thing I'll say though is that humans are mammals, and the mammals that were around at the extinction of the dinosaurs were small, sort of 1 to 2 kilo,
essentially
ferret-sized
rats,
things.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So we know fairly well the evolutionary history of mammals. Are Isu mammals? I guess they are, because they're similar to us.
They would. Well, if we're built in their image, then yes, they have to be.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, we saw. I don't remember if it was Brotherhood or 2 that showed the apple being used, and then we get a little bit more information in, if you can believe it, in Fate of Atlantis. But they make it sound like humans were built as a slave race to basically do everything they didn't want to. And then they built the Neanderthals to be a soldier race. Not smart, just numbers and numbers and numbers to fight.
Man, this is getting dark.
Yeah, so can you imagine the human Isu war, where the Isu have apples and swords of Eden, staves of Eden? Basically, think of a medieval battle where all the serfs are running forward with pitchforks, but it's Neanderthals going after humans. Talk about a pitched battle.
Yeah.
So this kind of went off topic very quick.
Yeah. Well,
I tell you what, then let me bring it back to topic with maybe a closing question. So, the Templars, what do we say, evolved or rebranded themselves as Abstergo in 1937?
Yes, that was when Abstergo was founded.
Okay. Could you sort of paint a picture for us about what is the current state of the Templars, Abstergo, who's in charge, what are they up to, what are the major characters that we know about that are sort of active? I suppose the most recent modern day we know about is 2020, maybe 2021, if we believe the board game. So who are the key players? Who are the key Templars that we know about?
So if we assume that Berg's live, he's probably going to be a big one. We have Letitia Ing. Wait, no, that was Isabel Ardant. Isabel Ardant died in was assassinated by Sean under Buckingham Palace in Syndicate. So there's the head of Abstergo Financial. I can't remember her name right now, but she's still alive. I think Simon Hathaway, he was, I want to say, the head of research and development. He's still alive. There's like 4 or 5 people. We don't know who the CEO of Abstergo Industries is. Melanie LeMay is still around that we know of. She's the CCO of Abstergo Entertainment.
Yep. Do we know where Sophia Riken is? It's Riken, isn't it? Not
She's
Riken.
still alive that we're aware of. Like, there's a chance that she's the new CEO, but to be honest, I don't think we're ever going to see that character again. Except we did see mention in Layla's emails because, well, they got to tie in the movie.
Yes.
But I doubt we're going to see her, Callum Lynch, anyone in the movies because, likeness rights are expensive. Ask Kristen Bell.
Indeed.
Yeah. They could probably afford to bring her back if they wanted to, but that's a thing for the calculations. So yeah, there's very little. No, there's like, I think the Inner Sanctum is about 9 people, and there's like 2 seats that are not held right now, and that's the one of Abstergo CEO and I think the historic branch with the lineage and acquisitions, which was the group that was found Desmond.
Right. So Simon Hathaway is historical research, isn't he?
I believe so.
Acquisitions is the people that kidnap those that they want to put in the Animus. Correct?
I believe so. They're the ones that found Desmond and Daniel Cross. So let's see. Who do we know right now? Current members of the Inner Sanctum. Agneta Ryder. She's the Abstergo financial lady. Latita England, who is the head of operations. David Kilkerman. He apparently replaced Vidic as under the Animus Project.
Okay. He's mentioned in Heresy, I think, as a member of the Inner Sanctum.
Dr. Mitsuko Nakamura. She is the director of lineage research and acquisition.
Okay.
Berg, Simon Hathaway, Alfred Stearns, who is the retired head of operations. And then the vacant ones are from Alvaro Grammatica, who was Future Technology, and Alan Ricken, CEO.
They need a CEO, man. They need to get someone in that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's crazy is we haven't known who the CEO is 6 years. He died in the movie in 2016.
That's a good point. It's taken them a long time to recruit someone, isn't it?
Yeah. I wouldn't want it. I mean, everybody coming after you. I wouldn't want it.
Indeed. Yeah, you're assassin target number 1, surely.
You're spending a lot of money. You have your own Sigma team on you at all times. That's for sure.
Yeah. Kind of makes me smile that, as far as we know, Melanie LeMay is still chief creative officer of Abstergo Entertainment.
Yeah.
The super chipper overachiever.
Okay, so the quote unquote head of the highest ranking individual that we know of is the General of the Cross. Unfortunately, we don't know who that is. All we know is that they are responsible for reviewing everything. And then there are 3 guardians directly underneath them. And the only one that we knew of was Alan Ricken.
Okay, so it's still very, very murky.
Yeah, and it all really comes out of the movie. It's the only one where we truly know of the modern day how it works. And we know, like, the Council of Elders, for instance, goes back to Black Flag, where they're the ones who tasks Torres with finding the observatory. And the only one we've ever seen in the modern day is Ellen Key, the old lady who was like, "Ooh, Alan, you have the apple. What are you going to do with it?"
Yeah.
So the modern day Templar Order is very murky with their command structure. When you say everything is canon, things get very murky very quickly. Especially if you don't talk through books, comics, movies, Netflix series, video games, board games.
Just as a tangent question, then, what was your opinion of the Assassin's Creed film?
That was fine. I like the historic section. I love the fact that they did it all in Spanish. The modern day, though, is kind of out there. I love the talent in the film. Michael Fassbender, Maria Cotillard, Brendan Gleeson, they're great actors. I just didn't see the story there, and I felt we spent too much time in the modern day because the story wasn't there. I feel that the Netflix series is going to have a better option to do that because they can tell a longer form story. They can either bookend each hour episode, I'm assuming it's going to be an hour, with a little bit of modern day, or they can do like they did with WandaVision, where they do 3 stories inside a one place, so like inside the history, and then they kick you out into a modern day story for an episode.
Yeah, that would be an interesting way of doing it. I watched it twice. The first time I watched it, I thought it was a bit rubbish, and the second time, I actually thought it's pretty good. If you consider the complexity of the story they're trying to tell, to an audience, of course the fans will watch it. But if you know nothing apart from I'm going to go and watch some sort of action film, where the hell do you start with someone who has never played the game or read a book? And I think actually they did a pretty good job of balancing the storytelling in a way that got the point across.
Well,
I have to say, in opposition to what you said, I quite enjoyed the modern day segments. I thought it was quite interesting.
Well, the crux of the modern day, using the apple to weed out violence, it's good. I had an issue with the size of the apple. I want to know why that apple is so much smaller than every other apple we've ever seen. But it's just one of those things to where, like, when the bleeding effect starts to really get to Callum, and he's like, "I'm crazy," I'm just like, really, dude? Can we just go back to you seeing Aguilar in the window?
I'll tell you one thing I thought, because if you're trying to make a mass market film that can bring in new audiences, you've got to give people something familiar to latch onto. The modern day serves that purpose, I think.
Yeah, giving you, and that's the whole thing of the series. Like, the very first game was latching onto that modern day, feeling the plight of Desmond or Callum and going through what they go through.
And what I thought after reading Heresy was Heresy's story, because it's either, I don't know if it's 50-50 modern day history or actually more modern day, but because it paints such a detailed picture of the workplace, and most of us go to work as adults, and it paints a picture of a large corporation doing corporation-y stuff, I actually felt that it would have been a better introduction to the franchise for a casual fan because of how it presents, because it's very anchored in the modern day.
Office Space and then add in a
Well,
little Templar and
well, Alan Rickon takes the printer out and smashes it up with a baseball bat. Yeah, yeah.
no, Alan Rickon just shows up with a cup of coffee and goes, "Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna need you to work on
I'm going to need
Saturday."
those TPS reports. Yeah, yeah. Oh, jeez. We may have gone off topic there and there.
A little bit.
I thought it was pretty good. I do think that Heresy's story was so well structured that it would have made a better first film and then lead into this one.
And when you look at outside content from the games, the only places you're going to find modern day are 4 novels, the Heresy novel and the 3 Last Descendant novels. Maybe there's some in fragments. I don't know. I don't read French, so I haven't read the book. There might be some in Jade Seal, but comics and that movie, and that's it.
Yeah. It gives Templar fans or people that are really interested in the Templar side of things pretty thin pickings, doesn't it?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
What about you, Declan? Closing thoughts on the film and the state of the modern day Templars?
My closing thoughts on the film is I will just defend that the only thing wrong with the film is it just felt rushed, in my opinion. It just felt, because you've got such a small time constraint, which is about 2 hours, to try and answer every question about the past, the animus, the present, the storyline. Not enough time. I really felt there was just so much unsaid that even as a fan since 2007, I did not understand the film on my first watch through, and I've been playing since Assassin's Creed 1, so it says something when I'm struggling to understand a film about Assassin's Creed. But during this whole episode, it's just sad to me that there is a lot of Templar lore out there which would change the stereotypes of the Templars from overtly evil to, well, the same grey area as Assassins, yet you don't get that story unless you dig, you look for it specifically, or you buy books and comics. And as a closing statement, that's not fair. The Templars should have the same spotlight as Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed isn't just Assassins. The whole label for Assassin's Creed is Assassins, Templars, and Isu, and you have to embrace that in every game you can, or give each game an option to shine in one of them territories. And now we've had 10 games to shine as an assassin, 3 games to shine some Isu light, now 4 more games to shine Templar light. And then modern day, I've never had a problem modern day, unless it's Unity and Syndicate. Then we have a problem.
Syndicate was fine. At least they got out and did something, and you weren't just sitting behind a computer in Unity.
Although the assassin that turns up right at the end, is it Galena? She comes from the comics, is that right?
Yeah, she came out first in Initiates. That's where you really learn about her story, where she's the last Russian assassin. She was experimented on in the Animus. She had to kill her twin sister and her mother because they went crazy with the Animus.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, she's a trooper. She's my absolute favorite character, and we only see her in Syndicate. She's mentioned
in a 30-second cutscene.
Yeah, and I killed Berg for you. Yeah. Just her saying I killed Berg for you, and then she's to the point where she just smashes his head with a rock, and she's like, "Nope, we got to leave. Beck's been shot." And then she's mentioned in an email, and I don't remember if that's Odyssey or Origins. We get, and then there's Takahashi that we hear from briefly watching the London hideout in Odyssey. There's so many even modern day assassins that are very briefly mentioned. Now we're speaking of Templars. I want to know, we mentioned Heresy, Victoria Babot. She's happy being a Templar at the end of that novel. Why is she an assassin in Origin and Odyssey?
Oh, well, I suppose reading Heresy after knowing that she joins the Assassins, I kind of interpreted some of her interactions with Simon as a little more like she was less convinced about what Abstergo were doing. But maybe I'm reading into that wrong because I know how it ends.
Yeah, all I remember from that is her knowing that Abstergo was a Templar company and just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So, like, why didn't we have in that instance Galena? Is it just because she's a, for lack of a better term, a weapon? She's an attacker? Okay, so if you can't have her, why didn't we have Gavin? Michelle Lamar. Let's see, who else right off the top of my head of assassin? Takahashi, he shows up. But R.N. Shroot, Cunningham. There is more than just saying, I'm going to pluck this Templar doctor and throw her in the game.
I have some light on Victoria Babo, if anyone's interested.
Ooh, I'm always interested in being proven wrong.
I remember looking up last year sometime. She leaves Abstergo in 2018 during the Ascendant event, which was discussed in the Last Descendants.
Yes.
I don't know if it's Tomb of Karn or Fate of the Gods, because I know I've been trying to read all three. But yes, she leaves of her own accord during the Ascendant event, and then is recruited by William Miles into the Brotherhood, joining Layla Hassan's team on behalf to look for the Ezo artifacts.
So, here's a question I have. If Simon Hathaway knew she knew about the Templars, why was she allowed to leave on her own accord?
I don't even know what the Ascendant event is.
All I know is that it's got something to do with running the Animus, like the one from the movie, which the Ascendant's Animus, Layla apparently helped design, according to the emails, I think in Origin. And it had something to do with bringing back the Trident. But then the kids completely disappear with the Trident. I don't know. There are so many loose threads throughout the series that have just been left hanging. When do you remember when the last book came out for Last Descendants?
I don't know.
It's been at least I want to say 2019.
I haven't read it yet. That's more the problem.
It's in my queue as well. But there's that line. There's the Otto Berg line. There's everything going on with the Altair 2. Like, I don't understand how a fishing trawler can't be found by Templars. I mean, you have satellites. It's a boat.
Let's not go down that route.
Yeah, I know. I could.
Hang on a minute. I am lost. Say that again, Andrew.
What?
Say that last bit again about a boat. I'm lost.
Okay, so the Altair 2 is a fishing trawler that the Assassins basically use as a mobile headquarters.
Yes.
That's how they got to Atlantis in Odyssey.
Yes.
So why is it that the Templars can't find a fishing trawler when they have satellites basically covering every part of the globe, to the point that a dad can accidentally get a channel between channels and find the heartbeats of his whole family, and then Abstergo shows up to kill them?
What is that you're giving, where the dad finds the heartbeats?
That is in Brotherhood. That is a voice recording within the Rifts.
Hell's bells. I mean, I'll answer the first part of that in two ways. Number one, there's a lot of fishing trawlers in the world. And number two, Altair 2 has plot armor.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And it's pretty tough. It's an armored trawler.
Yep. And that was another thing that I had an issue with, is Berg states more than once, I wanted to finish the purge. Abstergo wouldn't let me. We had bigger fish to fry. Hello, plot armor.
Mm. Mm.
So who knows, and where we're going to go, especially with the way Valhalla ends. The modern day could be, it's very interesting to see what they could do with Yggdrasil and the calculations.
Yeah. Yeah. And what they will do with Basim. Which
That's
side will he play? What story will he write for himself?
Yeah, and that's one reason why I really wish that Dawn of Ragnarok had modern day, is I assumed it had to do with him finding Fenrir, Hel, and Jorgmunder.
I think Declan has opinions on
I
Dawn of
have
Ragnarok.
opinions. I even have opinion that Fenrir isn't real.
What?
I think
Yes.
we're hoping that we can get together with Ludo History maybe next week, maybe the week after, to talk about Dawn of Ragnarok and its implications and its treatment of the original Norse myth. So this will be a good discussion. But Declan, go on. Fenrir is not real.
With your idea that Suter is Ragnarok incarnate instead of an actual Isu?
Sort of. It's something else I've been thinking about. Please, people are going to really shout at me, but let me explain this slowly so I get my thoughts right. So, first of all, I'm an avid book reader, okay? And I know when people tell stories, they sometimes give characters or animals a metaphor. So they're not real, they're just a metaphor, right? So that's why we're trying to thought this. And now we know in the Dawn of Ragnarok, Harvey makes a throwaway comment that Loki has been bound. But when does this happen? Now I know there's a myth comic out, so I could be proven wrong. So then it got me thinking, the wolf. What does a wolf represent? Now spiritually, a wolf represents loyalty and guardianship. And then it got me thinking, well, what if the whole story of Fenrir is Loki? When Harvey attacks Fenrir in Asgard, he is arguing with Loki, and when he nearly kills Fenrir, that's him nearly destroying his trust, his loyalty, and his guardianship over Loki, because Loki has free reign of Asgard because of Odin. He can sit in Odin's hall because of Odin's guardianship over him. So what if the binding of Fenrir is just a metaphor for the binding of Loki? Because you are binding Loki's trust and your betrayal. And the person who will kill Odin is Fenrir, aka Loki, because we know in the Animus Anomalies, Loki has bitter taste against the Mad One. So if anyone's going to kill Odin, it will be Loki, not Fenrir. So wouldn't it make more sense that the wolf in the DLCs is a metaphor for the loyalty and the trust that Odin's meant to have over Loki? That's why Loki gets away with a lot. So tricking Fenrir was actually him tricking Loki into being imprisoned, and in that pursuit, Tyr lost an arm, which is why Basim took a lot of good care towards Sigurd in the modern day after he started to remember memories, because he started to remember that Tyr was the only one who cared for him when he was in Isu life.
That would bring a very different perspective to the campfire scene. And
yes.
The Tyr losing his arm.
It does, but it's because there's a huge plot hole in the entire myth arcs that needs to be explained. And I will happily tell you now if you're interested.
I think you need to.
Yeah.
Yes. So the big plot hole that's missing from the whole myth arcs is the fine fact that in Norse myth, and I know everyone's going to hate this and I really don't care anymore, Odin hangs himself for 9 days in Yggdrasil, and he finds the secrets of the 9 realms and the 9 ruins. You could interpret that, in my opinion, that Odin is in the Yggdrasil machine with the reader looking at 9 different simulations just because he's just obsessed with knowledge. He sees a simulation of him being betrayed by Loki. So the whole arcs of him betraying Fenrir, of binding, is him trying to not understand the simulation but change the simulation because he wants to change fate, which is why the Norn sisters like, you can't change fate. But it's not fate, it's you can't change the simulation. This is what's meant to happen. And we know that Loki and the reader see the simulation of Layla finding Eivor, so they interfere and they try and meet them up. That was Loki from the simulation from the point of the reader. So it isn't a far stretch that Harvey hanged himself in Yggdrasil for 9 days. It was Harvey in an Animus device for 9 days, and he finds the simulation of an Isu civil war that he wants to stop, but he creates it. Him binding Fenrir between Loki seals his fate. So he finds the seventh solution to cheat death, and he wants Loki there when he finds the seventh method to say, "Ha, I have beaten your fate. You cannot kill me because I am unkillable." So when he walks out with his weapon drawn in the truth video, he says, "No one can follow me, not even Loki," because he's won. He's beaten fate. He saw the simulation of Loki killing him, and it will not work. But he didn't see Loki actually get into the device, so we don't see what happens after that truth video, which I believe would have actually been Harvey dying before Loki could get his hands on him, which is why Loki is now hunting him down.
Interesting.
Yes,
it's definitely a theory that it makes you want to look at the mythological arcs in a little bit different light, and it makes you also want to go, okay, so we're looking at this Isu stuff through the prism of this culture's mythology. What's real in the series and what's not. So that's,
like I said, it's a hard one to do, I will agree, but as you mentioned Suit before, I will admit Suitor cannot be anything other than a total catastrophe because it doesn't make logical sense for him to be an Isu.
the only way that makes any sense to me without finishing it is if the Muspels are Isu from North Africa, the Egyptian pantheon, because that would make the most sense to me with the Greek and Roman gods and the Egyptian gods, how they ended up intermingling near the Ptolemaic age and fighting the Aesir, those clans. That would be, it's the only way I could see that happening. And then the dwarves would be, the Sportvalheim would have to end up being probably, oh goodness, Germany, Russia, because the Aesir aren't there, and they'd be in Norway and other Scandinavian countries.
That would work. I think the only issue I just have, and I know I'm focusing too much on mythology, is the fine fact in the very last arc of Ragnarok, Sutra raises his fire swords to the heavens and cleans the 9 realms in fire, and then 2 humans walk out of the roots of Yggdrasil. How that is not a huge metaphor for a solar flare and 2 of the first human sages surviving, I don't know what is, but I'm probably barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, and we really won't know until Bassam's story has more light shed on it, which the way Valhalla is and the rumors of Rift, we're going to get it.
And I think the last point I'm going to make on this mythology is just very specifically, in the Battle of Ragnarok, I did forget another reason why I said why Fenrir isn't real, but a metaphor for guardianship loyalty. Odin is swallowed by Fenrir, and you could metaphor that it is swallowed by his guilt of failing to, keep up with his loyalty and the guardianship that he promised to Loki. Because he's not specifically killed by Fenrir, but he's swallowed by it, which could be interpreted by swallowed by guilt. And then Vader is killed by Fenrir, so probably if Vidar is an Isu, then that was probably Loki killing Vidar in revenge because he couldn't get to Odin in time. And then Heimdall killed Loki, so whoever Heimdall is. But I'm off topic already.
No, Loki killed Heimdall in the truth.
Yes.
So and then the Rigosaur, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I can see where your theory comes from. I guess it just really is going to depend on how much truth they want to put into the mythological arc.
I think I stand by my theory because it doesn't give a one-to-one representation, so it does give a little bit more clarity to what's real and what's not, without saying everything is Isu. That's why I think I'd stick to my theory, just so that I don't have to fall in the trap of everything's Isu.
That's
probably wrong. It's more than likely wrong because there is the comet, but I am never going to admit that everything is Isu, because it's not the case. Not everything has to be Isu. Come on, people. How many times I have to tell you? If you're going to do myth, 60% Isu knowledge, 40% human storytelling. That's it. And I think James is lost now.
No, I've been listening throughout. I'm just going to provide a contrary opinion here. I enjoy our conversations about trying to understand and interpret the stories we've had in the mythological arcs and in Dawn of Ragnarok. We're hoping that we can do kind of a follow-up episode on that. We're hoping, I've got an idea that we might go back to Odyssey and just look at how does Odyssey present Greek myth and Greek storytelling maybe in the next few months. But I think one thing I will say for future games, I don't want a story that requires multiple layers of thought to actually understand what the heck is going on. Maybe I'm just not smart enough, but I'm tired of all this deep analysis that's required to actually work out who's doing what to who. I just want a very simple game with a single kind of layer of story.
Yep.
But I don't know, man.
I'm going to be honest with you. After I finish a story, I'll have my thoughts, and then I'll go and I'll watch the story analysis from Access the Animus.
Same. But I don't want any more of these mythological veils or... Yeah.
I miss the simple times where it's just Templars and Assassins doing Templar and Assassin things and not like hunting for Isu artifacts, not trying to figure out who the Isu really are.
Yeah, exactly. Or, just to give a slightly different point of view, I'm pretty happy if I'm a Greek mercenary reuniting their family, or a grieving father who goes across Egypt to take out the people that killed his son. I quite like the games, as we've discussed many times, that don't strictly follow you are an assassin. But
I don't need to be a Templar assassin.
Yeah,
I'm perfectly okay being that pirate watching the Templars and Assassins fight each other and kill everybody.
Yes. So, yeah, that's my opinion on the myth. I'm happy to chat about the stories we've had, but I'm really hoping our next game doesn't require all of this additional explanation for it to make sense.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway,
I'm just going to say before I do my closing bit, I will play anything, and I do want mythology to come back because I think mythology is the only right way a human could explain Isu, but I don't want to be overanalyzing it. I want, like, Asgard and Jotunheim was the best because it had a clear-cut truth video at the end that was clear-cut. The DLC doesn't, and that's the issue. There should be a clear-cut truth behind the veil. There shouldn't just be left to guess.
Yep.
So that's...
Can I say one very quick point? And no, I haven't played Dawn of Ragnarok. I haven't even watched all the cutscenes. I don't know how it ends. But I did read a comment, can't remember if it was on Discord or Twitter or wherever, where somebody said it feels so unfinished that maybe there will be another DLC that finishes the story. What do you two think? You've played the game. What do you think?
I haven't finished it. That other secondary part could be Bassam's story in Rift. Because that was supposed to have been a DLC for Valhalla.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if Rift is out this year and it is a new game, a Basim game, I would wonder why they didn't just have a year 2 seasons pass that contains both. I
oh
guess
yeah,
they can make more money by
yeah.
selling them
I mean,
separately, I guess.
yeah, you sell Dawn of Ragnarok for $40. You sell this for $40.
60.
They can't put that out at 60. They have already had so many issues with sales with Ragnarok that they can't put a smaller game than Valhalla for the same price as Valhalla.
Do you think they have had, sorry Declan, I know you want to close the show, but this is interesting. Do you think they have had sales issues with Dawn of Ragnarok?
I don't know if you guys listen to Joy Raptor.
I haven't been watching his content. I'll tell you why, because I'm currently playing Horizon Forbidden West, and I'm just
That's fair.
avoiding any spoilers from his channel. I think he's pretty good at calling out spoilers. I'm not saying he's bad, but sometimes even a YouTube thumbnail can be a spoiler, and
That's
I'm
true.
really trying to stay free from Horizon spoilers. So I haven't watched his content for several weeks.
And I just scroll through and watch the Assassin's Creed content. But
Right.
the thumbnails totally get how you could get a spoiler out of that. But if I remember right, last week or the week before, he has made comments that this isn't selling as well as they thought it would. And that he speculated maybe in a week or two that it would be discounted.
It's not selling well, in my opinion, because one, the story is not a one-to-one of Ragnarok, and if they did it one-to-one to Ragnarok, it would follow the anomalies in the main story correctly, because they contradict the anomalies. They add information that is not correct because it talks about binding of Loki, but where is Loki bound? You never said. It's not in the comic. It must be Fenrir. And to play devil's advocate, if they do have another DLC size game this year, selling it for full price at $20-$30 is better than a year 2 season pass, because the problem is if you sell a season pass for $30 and people are getting 2 DLCs, if 10 people buy that, that's £300 back. But if you sell 2 DLCs for one for 40 and one for 30, well, 20, I'm going to say 20 plus price, and 10 people buy that, you're getting a bit more money. And plus, year 2 is a new first for the franchise, and it's not doing well because it's, to be honest, I love Dawn of Ragnarok. I just hate that I have to guess so much.
The problem I have with Ragnarok is the same issue I have with Valhalla. It's just too much grind and too much of a... I've spent most of my time riding around doing side content and picking up chests. I have not spent a lot of time on the game, and from what I understand is this is a 40 to 45 hour DLC where only 10 hours of it is story.
Yeah, I've heard even lower. I mean, again, haven't played it, don't know. I've heard even lower numbers than that. If you really just sprint the main story, I think I saw one of my friends suggest it was perhaps as little as 6.
Jeez.
So
that's not worth $40 to a lot of people, especially when you buy gold, which is all season 1, year 1 for $100.
Yeah. It's so odd, isn't it? The strategy of what they were trying to achieve. I can't work. And again, I probably shouldn't say too much because I haven't played it, and you need to play it through completion to make an informed judgment. But I mean, there's not much chat on Twitter. There's not much chat in Discord. There's not much chat on the subreddit.
At this point, we had for year 1, we had a roadmap. We knew what was coming. We would have known. We just missed a year ago. This week we had Ostara. We had that festival.
Yeah.
We know nothing about what's left for year 2. This is all we got. And they've made how much money off microtransactions with this game?
Well, they've made just in revenue, not profit. Revenue is over $1 billion.
Exactly.
For Valhalla.
Exactly.
So, microtransactions are working well, I would suggest.
They are the way of the future. Infinite will see that. And I mean, we could go on and talk about the future of the series, especially with this new tech that was reported by Kotaku. But
Ubisoft Scalar, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that. That article did not make me happy. because bigger
No,
is
me
not
neither.
better.
Me neither. I am concerned, but that's a topic for another time.
I agree.
Declan, you need to stop the show, mate, because we're just going to carry on chatting at this point.
Yeah.
I'm always concerned about Assassin's Creed, but I just wing it. I've been here since day one. I'm just winging it as I go along. I'm not to be rude, James, but you would never know the fear of playing Assassin's Creed 1 and then somebody saying, hey, this is Assassin's Creed Origins. It's massively open world. There's no hidden blade. It's like, what is this hell?
That after
that was
Syndicate,
terrifying.
where they go, we're gonna wipe this away. No, I spent so much time. No.
Like if someone said to me back in 2007, hey, play this game, it's great, but in 2015 or 18 actually, you'll play an open world with no hidden blade to start with and no puppeteer system, I would have pooed my pants.
Yep. You thought the transition between Revelations and 3 was bad. Wait for this one.
But I'm here 15 years later, and will Infinity stop me? Yes. Infinity may stop me.
Let's see how it's priced.
At this point. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just
Last-
curious at this point.
Last statement I'm going to make before I do the close up. Can we all just agree that Infinity was announced way too early?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
They didn't have a choice, they did they? Because Jason Schreier published his article.
It actually...
how many times has he come out and said this is where the next place is going to be, and they sat on it for months?
But let's not really forget that after Jason Schreier said it, they already had a blog post ready. And
so I think that my guess, and I don't know if this is how it works, he may have gone to their PR team and said, I have enough sources to publish what I consider to be an authoritative article. Do you wish to make a comment? Maybe there was a bit of discussion, or maybe they said we can make no comment, but they needed to get their own wording out as soon as he published.
I think it was one of two situations. Either he said something and they said, okay, give us this long before you publish.
Yeah.
Or they went to him with it and said, hey, publish something about this on this day.
The most logical, in my opinion, is it was a collaborative release to test the waters of people's reactions.
I can get behind that thought.
That, to be honest, that's what it was, because developments up in the air basically states right out that nothing's set in stone. So if developments up in the air, then they are following community feedback. It is, and if they are following community feedback, then this strategy is one of the best strategies they've got for making a game, because people are talking and they are now actively able to listen and change if they will.
Especially if they're smaller.
Yeah. So, because they keep reiterating that they're listening to fans and the content will be stuff they like, so they must be changing it to fit in.
Man.
I
don't know how they can, whether we like it or not, whether you like the format of RPG, whether you like the microtransactions or not. Valhalla is $1 billion platform. Before Valhalla, Odyssey was the best-selling game in the franchise. So this format, from a shareholder point of view, works. They can't just walk away from that.
They're not going to walk away from this. They're just making them
however
too
much
money.
the developers want that purity of a video game. And I'm just going to say here, right? I'm now 40 hours and about 35% through Horizon Forbidden West. I haven't done any of Aloy's daily quests or weekly quests. I haven't had to collect any opal. I haven't had to unlock any armors. I am just playing that story, and it's wonderful. But I don't think Ubisoft does games like that anymore. And it's a shame. I don't think the writers and the developers will be allowed to make a pure game like that. It's just too successful to do it the new way.
Unfortunately, I think you're right.
Welcome to the world of gaming, where everything is a horse race and is blooming difficult to face.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm a gamer since 2004 with Nintendo GameCube, and even then I didn't understand the world of gaming. 27, I still don't bloody understand it. I play games for fun, so whatever the heck Assassin's Creed is in the future, I'm here for it. I hope.
Yeah, I'll give it a go at least once.
Absolutely.
But if you don't have my boys, the Templars, in it, I am going to be raging.
Oh yes, we were talking about Templars, weren't we? Now we're talking about microtransactions, the gaming version of Templar. No.
Well, you remember that Abstergo Entertainment is based out of Montreal on.
Indeed.
Don't. I've already got a fear that Abstergo's listening to me.
It's not like Ubisoft was calling themselves Templars or anything.
Or
No.
Anyways, so Templars, one of the best laws in the franchise, but left out in the cold. They're sadly locked to comics and really small tidbits that you've got to hunt for. So, is the next future of the franchise Templars? Yes. It has to be logically a good step for the franchise. So if you enjoyed this episode and you want to talk more about Templars or spam me with your Templar thoughts, you can email me at assassinscreedletstalk@gmail.com or Twitter at ACLetsTalk and James on Twitter at JamesToTheQuid. And thank you, Andrew, for joining.
Oh, you're welcome very much. It was very intuitive. Well, not intuitive. It was a very fun conversation. I enjoyed it a lot. I hope we can do it again soon.
We have chaos. And you can follow him at VisionsAC, if I'm right.
Visions_AC.
Oh, underscore. Don't forget the underscore, because as a dyslexic person like me, that can find you some random things on the internet if you miss out a numerical key. I'm not going to go into that story, but it does happen. You'd be surprised what a dot can lead you to. So thank you for everybody, and we'll see you all next week.
See you soon.
Bye.